Welcome to the Tyler Werner Show, discussing all the latest in Philadelphia sports. I don't know what annoyed me most about this loss to the Dallas Cowboys by the Philadelphia Eagles. Aside from the usual Eagle haters / weasel Cowboy fans in the area running their mouths about the end result of the game, could it be the utter mediocrity this Eagles team has at the wide receiver position that seems to be the main proponent of this dink and dunk pass offense? Or maybe it was Doug Peterson, turtling up in the fourth quarter with his coaching decisions in critical situations where they could have put the game away with a little more confidence to convert a 4th and 1 or kick a field goal that was made basically twice earlier in the game. Oh, and don't get me started with the Wendell Smallwood fumble or the not-so-fake punt play by the Cowboys. Now the Eagles are essentially in a must-win situation against the Giants. They cannot afford to fall 0-3 in the division games and ultimately fall to last in the NFC East.
And now, here's Tyler Werner.
Oh yes, it's not a good time to be an Eagles fan right this week. As the Eagles, again, it's every opportunity to put that game away. This has got to be more disappointing than the Detroit Lions game, especially considering the fact that it was within the division. You had a chance to once again beat an elite team in the league, or at least a team heading into the game that was elite. As you can already right now, the Steelers are, they're not doing too well without Ben Roethlisberger. But anyhow, again, on this game, take your pick as far as disappointing things that happened, disappointing areas of this team that just continue to be disappointing, i.e. the wide receiver core. And one of the main culprits of this loss, obviously, is Doug Peterson. Without question.
Come on, that's terrible!
Several decisions late in the game that are questionable. We'll go through it here. The game started out the way it started out. With that initial Cowboys touchdown drive early in the game, where Ezekiel Elliott was, just looking like the beast that he is. Dez Bryant, hauling in a 50-plus yard ball, and I'm just thinking, oh man, it might be a long day for the Philadelphia Eagles here. And just a little drive alone, like that, where it's like, oh man, this is what the Eagles are missing right here. They don't have a receiver like Dez Bryant, and Dez Bryant's coming off an injury, his knee injury, mind you, and he, but nevertheless, the guy comes back and looked like he didn't miss a beat this game. And it's just right there. I'm like, well, damn. Don't we wish the Eagles had something like that? And throughout the game, that would continue to ring true in my head. That would continue to, beat like a hammer inside my brain. I wish the Eagles had somebody who could go down the field, stretch the field, who could catch a deep ball, who could get open. For one thing. We'll get to that then. More on that note later. And again, Ezekiel Elliott, he is what he was hyped up to be at the running back position. He's leading the league in rushing, I believe, so far this year. So he the next several years, he could be a headache against this Philadelphia Eagles team. And as viewers of the Eagles, as fans of the Eagles, a guy that you continue to be on the lookout for every time you play the Dallas Cowboys, and he's, every time he's healthy and suiting up for them. However, as the game would progress, for the most part after that, the Eagles for the majority of the game, defensively, they were giving up some yards to the Cowboys, but for the most part, they were holding them down. And with the aid of Darren Sproles having a pretty good game, kind of being the featured back here over Ryan Matthews, Darren Sproles, getting about 6 yards a carry, almost having a pretty good game. For the most, and I mean, throughout this game, at one point, Carson Wentz was, 27 for 32 or something like that on his. Look, I know they're dinking and dunking down here, but to consider that, like 3 of those incompletions were drop passes. I mean, Carson Wentz played pretty well this game. This was a game where he needed to be sharp, and for the most part, I mean, he was. But again, there continues to be mediocrity at wide receiver, and it continues to show. And we'll get to this later, but when asked about his drop, Nelson Agholor, kind of early in the game, but nevertheless would have been a nice first down and perhaps been a touchdown drive instead of a field goal drive. Nelson Agholor kind of spouted off a little bit when he was asked about, one of his drops that I don't know how you don't catch, but in this league, especially, it just continues to be a continuing thing with these Eagles receivers. But this was, again, the fact that they just don't, it's as if Doug Peterson, and I don't totally fault him for this. I mean, at Kansas City, when they didn't necessarily have a strong receiving core, and they kind of did a similar dink and dunk offense, they did have quite a run a couple years ago when they went off to their 9-0 start, which I knew at some point was going to even out, and they'd finished 11-5 then. But just the fact that here, I mean, you got Carson Wentz, and you don't have a weapon really to, I mean, a guy to go down the field with, and it's quite the shame, really. I mean, you got Jordan Matthews in the slot, decent, but, not a deep threat. By the way, I don't know if anybody's like, maybe we can see on the side of any milk jugs, but a missing sign with Zach Ertz's face on it, because quite frankly, he's been missing in action too. Quite frankly, he's not even a half decent tight end this year. He's slipping and sliding everywhere. He can't, he doesn't even break a tackle if he gets the ball, and he doesn't even get open. I mean, clearly the Eagles have needed him to step up with the lack of wide receivers that they have, with the lack of sometimes pass catchers, lack of hands, and he just hasn't stepped up to the plate here. I mean, at this point, he's got to be, he should be seasoned by this point in his career. And he's not. So, apparently, I'm just, right now, I mean, it's sad to say, but it's really a time where whatever Chip Kelly selections are on this Eagles team, it's really a hard time to be high on any of them, really.
Was that like a wise ass comment?
And I don't mean to take shots at Chip Kelly here, but it's just these guys that were chosen high. I mean, Lane Johnson, that's one thing. They're missing him, but he got suspended again. And he can't afford it, and that hurts the team. Zach Ertz. Early pick in the second round. You know, Nelson Aguilar, for crying out loud. You don't even have to get me started there. And Josh Huff, of course. It shouldn't be any news at this point. Of course, he was caught speeding. On the Walt Whitman Bridge, or I forget. I might have the name wrong there, but he was caught going 63 in a 45. It's nothing huge. But then, apparently they smell marijuana, the police officers, which warrants a search. And what they find in this, and that's not, it's, in the scheme of things, that's not a huge deal either, I guess. It's not it's not the first one to get caught with it. But then, unfortunately, what they find is a loaded gun that was not concealed well. And essentially, that Josh Huff may have just done that in his own foot, if you catch my drift here. As the situation continues to get looked at, Josh Huff could be in some pretty big trouble for this, because in PA, it's one thing, I guess, in PA where, gun control laws are more lax. New Jersey, they're pretty strict. And it doesn't matter if you have a PA permit. If you don't have a permit to carry one in Jersey, and he essentially kind of gets charged for, carrying a loaded gun, and it's not concealed well in the trunk with the ammunition and the firearm separated, then from what I gather, it's not looking good for Josh Huff, and he could possibly serve a year or so of jail time. Just from listening from other sports radio and some people calling in, and one call into the Mike Missinelli show, and
Brindy, how you doing, man?
Yeah, and basically said he once got charged for a similar thing. The only charge he ever, with a clean criminal record, he got charged for something similar and had to serve 14 months of jail. So, I don't know. That's not looking good for Josh Huff, and we'll monitor the situation here. Now, granted, Josh Huff is more so a glorified special teams player. Can we, I guess we can kind of...
I agree.
Yeah, we can agree to that, right? Because he just, for the most part, he hasn't done squat here as a wide receiver with his time thus far for the Philadelphia Eagles. Here he is in his third season. Now, he almost broke another touchdown return the other night, but the Eagles got great field position out of that. But at the end of the day, we got Huff in the wide receiving core, Aguilar, and which we'll get to, Dorial Green Beckham. Again, these Eagles receivers, it's like they don't run good routes. And Dorial Green-Beckham gets, a crucial penalty at one point, and pass interference / hold. Nelson Aguilar just completely misses on a block. Like, oh my God. They just don't, like, they're just lacking at the, and again, don't get me started with Zach Ertz. I mean, it's like he's regressed as a player here. He should be starting to peak now. And he's not. Again, Carson Wentz, he did, for the most part, the best he could in this game. He didn't make a whole lot of mistakes. At times, the offensive line just, had an occasional breakdown, and it's like, well, what does Carson Wentz do? Where does he go? How does he get out of this trouble? And for crying out, late in the game, I mean, he kind of gets sacked from behind. It's amazing he holds on to the football. For crying out loud. He fumbles there. Dallas Cowboys could possibly pick it up and run it in for a touchdown there. Or they just get great field position on offense. So, but the fact that they couldn't put this game away was just, it was irritating, we could say. Very, very irritating. Now we're going to, quick take a little break here. And we'll come back on the other side. We got to discuss, look, I can discuss ad nauseum this receiving core, especially a week after this week, where I'm just like Carson Wentz, 203 yards or whatever on his 30 plus completions that he had out of 43 or whatever it was. And several drop balls that resulted in completions, no interceptions, a touchdown. Decent outing, but I especially this game where I'm watching Dez Bryant go to Terrence Williams. Cole Beasley was quiet in this game for the Cowboys, but even at times he was able to make a play or two. It just continued to just kind of claw and scratch at me. Even when the Eagles were up 10, and I still figured, well, they'll put this game away, and it still would show, and would still just creep into my thought process that, man, if they could complete one down the field here a little more, even for 25 yards. If somebody could get open on a post route or something. I don't know if Doug Peterson's holding back on his, because he just knows what he doesn't have, or what. But clearly it's an issue on this Eagles team, and unfortunately the trade deadline passes with no Eagles activity. Supposedly, the Eagles, they wanted to trade for Torrey Smith. There was also the Alshon Jeffrey possibility, but apparently the 49ers, Chip Kelly, apparently they wanted too much, I guess. So,
Thanks, guys.
hey, I'm sure we all would have been all for Nelson Aguilar going back to Chip Kelly and maybe getting Torrey Smith, which I guess is somewhat of an improvement over what they have at least, but unfortunately it didn't happen. We'll come back on the other side. We'll talk more Eagles, obviously. Some Doug Peterson. We'll hear from Doug Peterson. We'll hear from Nelson Aguilar. And we'll sweat it out. But And we'll continue to discuss this disappointing and devastating loss against the Dallas Cowboys that the Eagles had at the tip of their fingers to win. We'll be right back after this on the Tyler Werner Show.
Investigators are calling it the heist of the century. The grand robbery of Brady and Belichick's slow-cooked Italian meatballs, committed by some apparently hungry NFL officials who love their balls.
When I came in Monday morning, I was shocked to learn of the news reports about the balls and the process that happened between when they were prepared and went to the officials and went to the game.
As shocked as Belichick was of the news, perhaps Brady, the last man out of the kitchen on that Sunday night, was even more shocked to hear of the news of the theft.
I have a process that I go through. It was the same process that I always go through. When I felt them, they were perfect. I mean, I wouldn't want anyone touching those. I would zip those things up and lock them away, and that's what I thought I was doing.
As Brady and Belichick up the ante on their ball security, you'll just have to pick up a pack of their meatballs the next time you hit the grocery store and enjoy just how perfect these balls really are.
Tom's personal preferences on his ball security are something that he can talk about in much better detail than I could possibly provide.
Hi there, I'm Hank Hill. Well, I'd like to tell you what Strickland can do to meet your energy needs. You see, at Strickland, the customer comes first. It's kind of interesting, the word customer begins with C-U. Well, we don't see you as just another sale, but as a member of our team. I thought you might enjoy 7.5 gallons of pure premium propane. Strickland Propane, the customer comes first.
Number one box office attraction, number one WWE superstar, multi-time WWE champion, Brock Lesnar.
Time to revamp your office space, eh? Looking for an interior decorator? Look no further than Brock Lesnar.
Now that's the way a real man uses a sledgehammer.
Out with the old, in with the new. Give Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman a call.
Mr. Lesnar, you are the future of interior decorator. I think we're done.
It's time for Tyler Werner's call-out of the week.
I just think somebody owes us an explanation, that's all. What's the matter with you?
Loser! You're a loser!
Are you kidding me?
Well, I have a microphone, and you don't.
So you will listen to every word I have to say!
Oh, yes, I guess this is certainly a week that I guess kind of warrants the revival of the Tyler Werner Show call out of the week. We just haven't done here in a while on the Tyler Werner Show. So I guess I kind of hinted at it previously. I mean, you could point the finger every which way. But I mean, you could call out Doug Peterson on this loss. You could call out Zach Ertz, who just continues to be like missing in action for this Eagles team. You could call Wendell Small fumbling. You could call out people every which way. Josh Huff too, in a sense. But as far as like in regards to this loss, and just a first-round pick that continues to be a disappointment, a first-round pick who was brought here and was revered for being such a good guy, a class act. And after another bad drop and just overall lackluster play, the call out of the week to me is Nelson Aguilar for this week. I'm going to fade this down. Here's what he had to say for those who haven't heard it about drops and his thoughts on it. Essentially, being asked about it the other day after the game. Here's Nelson Aguilar.
End of the day, man, that is nothing. You just got to make the next one. Everybody run routes. You know, sometimes they're contested, sometimes you drop them. But if you make as many as you possibly can and come your way, you're going to put yourself in a good position. No one's perfect. I don't look at no drops, none of that type of tired of hearing that. stupid. We play football. I mean, I dropped the first one. I ain't dropped one after that. What does it matter? Is it because if we lose, now it's like we're going to place blame on, oh, this person did this. No. As a team, we had a responsibility to win football games, and I get it. Certain plays could have helped, but there's still 4 quarters of football to be played, and we got to win. And y'all, you heard it from me. I don't got time for that no more, man. I got time to win football games only. No statistics, no who did this. Win. That's all that matters, and that's what this coaching staff care about. That's what I care about. That's what we all care about: winning football games.
All right, so there you have it. He doesn't have time, you know. Yeah, I mean, kind of like trying to take some blame off of himself, and I mean, here's what my thinking was, especially on the one drop in particular that we all saw, and you know, I guess was maybe one of 2 balls that he could have caught the whole game. I guess he caught one at some point during the game, but you know, the first one, it seems he gets thrown towards him. And it's like he jumped when he didn't need to jump to catch the ball. And I don't know, like, if he's going to jump to catch it, it should have been one of those things probably where he catches it in his body. And he doesn't. He, like, jumps and he tries to catch it with his fingertips or something. And this is just fundamental. I mean, I'm not trying to... I mean, it's just basic football. I think we can all agree on. Now, if you don't jump, then you do the diamond thing where you put your, you know, kind of your index and middle fingers together and your thumbs together. You know, that diamond. I mean, this is all fundamental stuff here. I mean, this is middle school football. I mean, I don't know what else to say about it. Other than the guy is just dropping too many passes and he's not making enough plays that you would want your first round draft pick. Well, I mean, I know it was more Chip Kelly's first round draft pick, but still, nevertheless, a guy on this roster who was chosen at number 20 or whatever, and the guy's not cutting it. And quite frankly, many people want him out of town at this point. And for right reasons. He's a bust. Let's just say that. He's a bust. Ertz is looking like a bust. And it's clear that the Eagles, they got to do better at receiver. And unfortunately, no trades were made. I guess I mean, I know without Sean Jeffrey, the deal would have been difficult to do. I mean, logistically, with money, it would have been tough, I guess. But, you know, with his franchise tag at Chicago, and so that was a little difficult, I guess, to pull off. But Torrey Smith, I think, would have at least been a marginal improvement over what they have. It would have made them a little better at wide receiver, but obviously they have work to do. That's without question. Now, Doug Peterson, again, we'll get to him momentarily. And some of the thoughts that he had. More so the day after. You know, time to look at film, time to look at things. You know, what he could have done better. Let's just, late in the fourth, look, for the most part, I know he might have limitations as to what he can do with his receivers, but for the most part, throughout the game, I mean, he called a pretty decent game until late in the game when it came down to some crucial decisions. Maybe not as much play calling, but some crucial decisions that a coach has to do better on late in the game. Like, and it showed. They come out in the third half and, like Chris Collinsworth and Al Michaels were kind of joking about it. It's like, did suddenly Chip Kelly come back or something? They're going up tempo.
Was that like a wise-ass comment?
No, but it worked to their favor. I mean, again, it's not a every game thing that you want to do throughout the whole game, but they came out, they caught the Dallas defense on their heels, and they went down for a touchdown drive. And it was like clockwork. Again, Darren Sproles had a pretty decent game here, carrying the football. Ryan Matthews was kind of, the second stringer. But we get into the fourth quarter, and it's time to start putting this game away. And again, things will happen in the NFL. Strange things will happen. You'll go back to, block a punt of the Dallas Cowboys, fourth down. Going to get the ball back, run time off the clock. Strange things will happen in the NFL where you almost get to the punter, and the punter knows that maybe I shouldn't punt this ball. And instead of punting it, he keeps it and he runs it up for the first down. And that sucks. But while that sucks, at the very least, you're still up 10. You can still stop them. Maybe run the ball down the field for some more points. Run time off the clock. That play was very unfortunate. But nevertheless, the Eagles still had chances to put this game away. So, now I know this goes back to last year with Chip Kelly and how the running back rotation was oftentimes, it didn't totally make sense. And here's another case where it didn't make sense. That supposedly Deuce Staley's in charge of. But even so, as a head coach of this football team, just like last year, when I would personally blame Chip Kelly for maybe not having more authority over which running backs are out, and not having more foresight on that. Supposedly, all right, Darren Sproles, for a play or two, wanted a breather. Or could have used a breather, or that's what Deuce Staley thought was appropriate, yada yada. And they trot Wendell Smallwood out there. I don't think he played a snap all game. So it's one of these things where it's like, all right, you just going to bring him out now? Just like I don't know, just as like, oh, well, we haven't put him in the game all game. Let's put him in, we'll put him in now. I mean, I don't know if they were afraid that Ryan Matthews, would fumble. Well, Wendell Smallwood, who hadn't played the whole game, and is maybe, cold, he gets trotted out there and he fumbles the football, the first play. And while it's kind of on him, it's also on the decision to put him out there then. Like, why wouldn't you put him out at some point earlier in the game? Why don't you do more? I don't understand. Like, you got these 4 backs, basically. Because Kenyon Barner was even in there for a little bit earlier in the game. So I'm thinking, like, at least, like, he had a little bit of playing. Like, Kenyon Barner at least had a little bit of feel in the game. And, if you're not going to put Ryan Matthews out there, I would think at that time, based off of what you've been doing throughout the game, maybe you'd put Kenyon Barner out there rather than Wendell Smallwood, who for the first time was basically coming off the bench and into the game all game long here in the fourth quarter. That I didn't get.
I just think somebody owes us an explanation, that's all.
I don't know if it's like, oh, well, we got to throw him a bone. You know, I don't know. And I maybe in the pecking order on the depth chart, maybe Smallwood's ahead of Kenyon Barner, I guess, but I just didn't totally understand it at that time in the game when he hadn't played all game on offense. Momentarily, we'll listen to some Doug Peterson, maybe some of his insight on these things. But while that fumble was also crucial, there were still other decisions that could have been made that could have changed the outcome of the game. And I don't know. Again, maybe some Andy Reid moments here.
Time's yours.
As some people have criticized some of these calls for, but the field goal that they could have kicked. It was fourth down, the Philadelphia Eagles late in the game, one of those later drives, and they decided that they were going to punt instead of kick, I guess perhaps a 53-yard field goal. They had, again, heading into halftime, they were able to drive the ball down the field fairly quickly, get into a long field goal range, but Caleb Sturgis goes to kick it. He gets iced. He makes it, and you're thinking, oh, well, now he might not make it when the kick actually will matter. And he makes it even more accurately and with probably more leg than he did when the Cowboys iced him. So he basically just put through two 55-yard field goals. So here's one that's slightly shorter. No, we're gonna punt the football. And Doug Peterson's initial explanation on this was, I guess we were just trying to play for overtime or whatever. And I mean, and he said how he was trusting his defense too, that we'd punt the football. Well, how about trust your kicker, because he made those field goals earlier. And if you're if you're going to trust your defense with less field position, if you're going to trust your defense that you're going to punt the ball to the Cowboys, I mean, to me, trusting your defense more so would be, even if you miss the field goal, all right, you trust that you're going to hold them to less than a touchdown at least, even if they get the ball on the 40-yard line or whatever, wherever they'd get it if they miss that field goal. That's a little more so trusting your defense. But no, they punted the ball to him. And then there was the situation where late in the game, the Cowboys, they were Dak Prescott was getting pressured. Connor Barwin sacks him. And they were just going to let the clock run. And whereas if, instead of letting it run out and instead of heading towards overtime, letting the game head towards overtime, they could have called timeout, had Dallas punt the ball to him. Kind of backed up. Darren Sproles back there. Maybe, on the punt return, maybe get some good yards, a few extra yards. They could almost be back in field goal range. And they'd still have, at least 20 seconds left on the clock. Maybe time for a play here or there. to gain a few more yards and kick a game-winning field goal. But they didn't do that. And Doug Peterson's initial explanation was, we just wanted to let the clock go to overtime. So that was also, again, crucial and unfortunate calls on Doug Peterson's part. Rather, again, it's... And people want to say, oh, well, it's his first year at head coach, and, it's... Well, still, he was given a job, and this is just kind of... To me, it's just kind of fundamental. It's not... It's not like the first year, he gets a pass kind of thing. Or he should get a pass or whatever. That's something that a good coach should be doing differently there. And that's not to say that Doug Peterson's not going to be a good coach. But I guess he in his day after press conference, upon more further review, if I could use that pun, he kind of said, I'll evaluate it and maybe, do things differently. Next time, should have maybe do things differently there. Maybe kick the field goal, yada yada. But that's something you got to look at and be disappointed about in this game. It's one of these things, too. You don't want your head coach to lose you football games. And that's where the question gets raised, too, down the road. Like, you don't want, like, every season where there's, like, a couple games where it's like, your head coach might lose you the football game because of time management or because of maybe not going for it when they should and normally would go for it. Just like on another drive that I almost forgot to mention, where after a penalty, the Eagles, instead of a 4th and 6, have a 4th and 1. And if they convert it, which normally they do, they're aggressive and they convert these 4th downs. They've been pretty good at that throughout the season, even 4th and 2s. And they convert them pretty well. They keep the ball moving, they keep the drive going, maybe they can get a touchdown. Or, even if they don't, they're still ahead. And the Cowboys have the ball on like the 7-yard line, 7 or 8 yard line of their own. So we'll come back on the other side and we'll kind of wrap things up as we need to. Top 5 thoughts around the NFL. Hear from Doug Peterson a little bit as he, addresses some of these things on the day after press conference, because it was a big week for that. And of course, we had a little trade with the 76ers. As a matter of fact, the Eagles don't make a trade, but the Sixers do. And maybe we'll just wrap things up here on the Tyler Werner Show as we have some other fish to fry before we wrap things up. So that in mind, it is the Tyler Werner Show, and we'll be back right after this.
Attention parents. Is your under 18-year-old daughter being cyberstalked by a man who identifies themselves as a grown adult male?
I want to meet you and fool around. Are you up to meeting tonight, hon? I think I would like to shower with you. We can do it in the shower, too.
If so, you need to contact Chris Hansen and Company to bust these online cyberstalkers.
How are you tonight? Why don't you have a seat there and get comfortable for that?
I guess you're going to tell me next that this is the very first time you've done something like this.
Chris Hansen and the Dateline crew will take care of it. Contact us, and we will put an end to the cyber stalking that your daughter is experiencing.
Well, there's something you got to know. I am Chris Hansen with Dateline NBC, and we're doing a story on computer predators.
Busted!
The
champion of game day catering, is the official meatball of the Tyler Werner Show, Brady and Belichick's slow-cooked Italian meatballs.
We prepare our balls over time, and that's the essence of the preparation.
On top of that, another trademark of Brady and Belichick's slow-cooked Italian meatballs is Brady's signature rubbing process.
When I pick balls out, to me, they're perfect. I don't want anyone touching the balls after that. I don't want anyone rubbing them. To me, those balls are perfect.
What is a concern is the texture of the balls, and again, that's the point that Tom hit on hard.
The champion of all game day catering dishes is Brady and Belichick's slow-cooked Italian meatballs, the official meatball of the Tyler Werner Show. And we're back here on the Tyler Werner Show. Getting ready to wrap things up here. Kind of bouncing around like all over the place with this this Eagles team. After just a devastating overtime loss to the Dallas Cowboys, the Eagles had a game that shouldn't have even gone to overtime, for that matter. And again, we're kind of bouncing around all over the place after this game. I mean, all the stuff that happened, to try to gather ourselves after this loss. I mean, the various, coaching decisions by Doug Peterson, the Wendell Smallwood fumble, it's just it's kind of a mess of a game to walk away from. And Nelson Aguilar had his comments, which we played earlier, and Zach Ertz, says how he's not getting the ball enough, and yada yada. And then, of course, we got the Josh Huff issue, who again, he gets caught speeding, 63 and a 45, but that's nothing compared to, he's got tinted windows, and then he's found with marijuana, and then ultimately that leads to a search on the Walt Whitman Bridge where he's found to be carrying a loaded gun with hollow point bullets.
Man's got to know his limitations.
And essentially, he could be facing some considerable jail time. And, we were going to talk about, we were going to play some Doug Peterson audio of, some coaching decisions that he made. But right now, this issue with Josh Huff is kind of, as we're moving forward through the week here against the Giants, which the Eagles, it's a must-win bounce-back situation for the Eagles. They can't afford to start 0-3 in the division. They just can't. And I think they've proven if they can beat the Cowboys within fear that they can beat the Giants. But anyway, Josh Huff, a glorified special teams player for this Eagles team, because again, he hasn't really shown anything as a wide receiver. He really hasn't here for this Eagles team. And now you got this jail time that's likely hanging over him, and it's just, you had the Nigel Bradham thing, and the Nelson Aguilar situation, which ended up being nothing really earlier in the summer. But now you got this, and it's like, and of course the second Lane Johnson suspension, unfortunately. You got this, and I think it's pretty imperative that Doug Peterson, the organization, that they start setting a bit more of a tone and suspending guys until further I know there's the whole, they're going to investigate him and innocent until proven guilty, but this is Josh Huff, all right? And people in this team, players in this team, they need to start getting a tone set where this stuff, this dumb stuff cannot be happening. Just so everybody's, how this, where Doug Peterson stands on this right now. Here's some audio. Play a few of his press conference actually from yesterday morning, I guess, or no, it was from this morning, as a matter of fact. Here's Doug Peterson this morning on the Josh Huff issue. Here we go.
Do you feel there's a necessary situation for a meeting with the team to talk about that again, or for the players to have a meeting about that outside the building?
I do. I think that, it's part of my message to the team this morning, because I hadn't seen them in a couple days. So part of the message this morning is how we handle our business. I also think, too, that, you make poor choices in life, you're going to make poor choices on the football field. You're going to make, if it's a constant thing, then eventually you suffer the consequences. And when you're dealing with so many guys, coaches, players, office, trying to keep everybody on the same page is when you're dealing with a lot of personalities and a lot of backgrounds. My job too sometimes is to be that father figure for some of these players and understanding their history and where they've come from and how they grew up. And it may not be how I grew up as a child or as an adolescent or a teen, whatever. But at the same time, I'm going to wrap my arm around them and love on them and try to show them the right direction.
You're concerned by the fact he brought a gun onto the premise, and you think it's a common occurrence?
I don't know I'm not going to speculate on that.
Doug, this is like multiple incidents now, so if people on the outside looking in say, does Doug Peterson have full control of his team? How do you respond to that?
I would say that I do. Again, I can't control what you do outside of once you leave here, I don't know what you're going to do. Now, I'm not responsible for you, but I can't control what you do once you leave these premises. Neither can the Philadelphia Eagles control what I do once I leave these premises. I just know who I am as a person, and I try to relay that to the team and just let them know that, hey, guys, you have to, the spotlight is on us. In this city, in this market, the spotlight is on everything we do. And you have to be smart. You have to make right choices. You have to do things differently. You just have to do them differently. And because everything's magnified. But again, it's once they leave here, that's the hardest thing to control.
Is that not getting through?
Well, we just keep talking about it.
You talked about father figure and wrapping your arms around guys and that kind of thing, but isn't another part of it discipline? Do you think that maybe more discipline needs to come down if you have a number of incidents, one after the next, where guys are stepping out of line?
I think that there comes a time, when there could be some discipline like that. Obviously this could be a case again, and I just want to make sure that these guys, that I'm doing right by these players and they're doing right by themselves, and that we're handling our business away from this building right. And if that means discipline at some point, then we address it at that point.
All right, so there you have it. Doug Peterson, gonna, kind of waive the idea right now of any further discipline. And I guess it's gonna be, wants to wrap his arm around,
Josh Huff, or however he worded it. Like a teddy bear, or I don't know, however he made it sound.
Gosh, it went great.
So, I mean, really, it's... Again, I know he mentioned about how he can't control... like, what guys do outside this. But, well, I mean, yeah, you kind of see that on one hand, but on another level, you could maybe control a little more so. Maybe less of these things will happen if players start to see that there's going to be punishment from the team. That's how this has to be. I mean, the whole wrap your arm around, trying to be a father figure, and I mean that's all well and good and sounds great on paper. But I got news for you. The Eagles sit back and they don't let anything happen here. And pretty soon, it's like anybody can do what they want here. You don't want that. I mean, for crying out loud, they signed Dorial Green Beckham, and not that he's guilty of anything criminal or anything, or done anything since being with the Eagles, but he's known for, some possible shenanigans. And you don't want shenanigans and distractions if you're trying to build a winner here. Look at New England. Like, they don't tolerate it. Bill Belichick, they're not going to put up with that.
This is the end of this subject for me for a long time.
That's the bottom line. And while it's all well and good, you want to be a player's coach, you want to open your heart, as Jeffrey Lurie said.
You got to open your heart.
As they were searching for a coach last year, it's at some point though, you got to put the foot down and like for this organization's sake, for this team's sake, put the foot down and not stand for shenanigans like this. This is stupidity at its worst. And listen, in the off season, I was the one saying that, can they Josh Huff? He might get cut. He might not. Well, he's not cut, but I'm saying if he's not cut, he might not be here on the team next year. This is before any of this. Now it's really looking. Now he looks like he's facing jail time, and is very expendable. You can find, you have, at least for the time being, Wendell Smallwood and obviously Darren Sproles, who can return kicks and punts. You can replace Josh Huff, and it's not like Huff has been absolutely lighting the world on fire. I mean, he's been decent the last few weeks, in particular with kick returns, but as far as a wide receiver, and just in general, overall, he's not going to be missed when he's going to have to face jail time or whatever. I mean, you suspend him now. You do your duty, I think, as far as setting the foot down. You do it. Suspend him. Let it not be a distraction. You put the foot down of authority that this stuff can't fly. That when you step out of the NovaCare complex and whatever, and you're out on, you can't do this stuff. Doesn't matter whether it's the off season, whether you can't do it. You can't be caught doing stupid things like this. I mean, He got the permit in Texas, which, you know, I mean, I could imagine, you know, it's a lot easier to get a gun in Texas and a lot more lenient down there than it is in New Jersey. And as a gun owner, you gotta be responsible for that. Especially if you're gonna have tint on your windows that, you know, exceed the amount of tint that they're supposed to be, and if Huff doesn't really have a leg to stand on here. And again, I mean, there's just no room for this. There really isn't. There's too many shenanigans, it seems. You know, before that it was Nigel Bradham, and I remember Jim Schwartz had some things to say about that. I mean, you know, I think Jim Schwartz, it was a defensive player, but nevertheless, you know, I think he cared. I think he was more angry than Doug Peterson was about it, about doing stupid things like that. I mean, when he gets asked if he feels he has control of this team, and, well, I mean, he can say if he feels he does or not, but you got to start, sooner or later, you got to start to realize, like, this is another issue after another issue, you know. And I'm not trying to point out, I'm not trying to say, like, oh, it's Doug Peterson's fault that Josh Huff is irresponsible, I guess, with carrying a weapon where he shouldn't be, in a state where he's not allowed to carry it like that. And, you know, it's kind of on Josh, but at the same time, this is just yet another example where maybe a suspension from the team is in order here. So that maybe dummies on this Eagles team can hopefully maybe realize that they have to conduct themselves better, perhaps, than they are or have been. That this kind of stuff cannot happen outside of the locker room or outside the NovaCare complex. It can't. So that's the bottom line on that. By the way, before we get to top 5 thoughts around the NFL, Flyers overtime win tonight against the Detroit Red Wings. 4-3. Jake Voracek with the game winner. It just came down. And it's a good win for the Flyers tonight. Oh my God! Alright, so, you know, I mean, the Eagles talk just kind of dominates right now. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to get into a lot of Flyers talk right now. But, you know, it seemed to be a, you know, on and off team with winning and losing so far. You know, they win one, they lose one, they win one, they lose. You know, it's tough to gauge where they're at, where they're headed, or however you want to phrase it right now in this season. But certainly, it was an interesting week to gauge top 5 thoughts around the NFL. Top 5 thoughts around the NFL. I guess this would be Week 8 edition. We're about mid-season. It's hard to believe. Some teams have already played half of their regular season games. And so, we start off with thought number 5.
being the Minnesota Vikings, ladies and gentlemen. Losing their second, after their 5-0 start. Again, of course, they lose to the Eagles last week. But this week, they lose their second straight game to the Bears, who had one win on the entire season so far. As the Bears beat the Vikings 20-10. Jay Cutler back in the fold this week. And they managed to put up 20 and defensively hold the Vikings to 10 points. Sam Bradford getting sacked several times, having trouble. Yeah, you wonder if the Vikings are starting to, come back down to earth a little bit. I don't know. Number 4, the Houston Texans defeat the Detroit Lions 20-13, and they now sit at 5-3 atop the AFC South. So yeah, not the greatest situation at quarterback run off it, but the Texans, nevertheless, they might have win this division nevertheless and host a playoff game in the first round. Unless maybe the Titans have something to say about that, because the Colts continue to struggle with Andrew Luck. Number 3. Here's a team that's not struggling. The Oakland Raiders. As they move to 6-2 with their 30-24 overtime win versus the Buccaneers. Derek Carr having a Pro Bowl season. Mari Cooper, need I say more? This Oakland Raiders team is now 6-2 along with the Denver Broncos in that division in the AFC. The AFC West, that is. 6-2 along with them, and then the Chiefs are right there at 5-2. So that's a competitive division right there. But the Raiders, not only a possible wild card team this year, but perhaps in the running to win that division. We'll see, because they play the Broncos in Week 9. That should be a good game. Thought number 2, the Atlanta Falcons coming through in the clutch as they beat the Green Bay Packers 33-32. Aaron Rodgers and the Packers fall to 4-3. Definitely having some injury issues at the running back position. Might be starting to show. As the Falcons move to 5-3, and now they seem to have a for the time being a comfortable lead in the NFC South. Matt Ryan having a pretty Pro Bowl-like season. Looking like the Matt Ryan of older days. Big win for the Atlanta Falcons. Number 1 thought around the NFL. Week 8. Is the New England Patriots getting revenge in Buffalo, defeating the Bills 41-25, and moving to 7-1 into their bye. And of course, afterwards, after Rob Gronkowski broke the Patriots' touchdown reception record with 69. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we all saw and heard it correctly. A dildo was thrown onto the field.
What?
Yep, that's right.
I've handled dozens of balls over the past week.
To me, those balls are perfect.
Yeah. Those Bills fans, apparently, I don't know who else, apparently there was, in between two cars, I don't know what it is with Buffalo.
I really don't know. But, yeah, a couple getting it on in the parking lot and, just...
Oh, my God!
A dildo getting thrown onto the field. Hopefully no younger children are tuning into this, right? But supposedly the ref, for those who watch, the referee didn't want to pick it up, and that's, I guess it's kind of easy to understand why. I mean, they don't know where that thing came from. They don't know where that thing's been. The one official was kind of just kicking it around, and I don't know what, and I mean Rob Gronkowski kind of joked about. He was asked about it after he joked about it. And Tom Brady kind of said he remarked how the referee didn't want to pick it up. They gotta, somebody's gotta ask Bill Belichick, of all people, to ask this about. I wish somebody would have brought it up to Bill. I don't think anybody did. But I mean, just the reaction that he would have to it. I mean, oh man. Well, anyways,
this is the end of this subject for me for a long time.
Yeah, that's thought number one around the NFL. More importantly, it was a big win for the Patriots, who are now 7-1, the only 7-1 team in the NFL. Although to note, the Cowboys are 6-1, so they're in the NFC, kind of in that upper echelon. But Tom Brady, ladies and gentlemen, is just having that again. So much for that 4-game suspension. Here the Patriots are 7-1, and not missing a beat.
To me, those balls are perfect.
And the balls he's thrown are pretty perfect this year, gotta say. And it's not sure. Not sure who can beat him. Maybe then possibly the Broncos with that defense and the AFC right now. Possibly if the Steelers pick things up into the playoff time. I don't know. All right, that's going to wrap up this edition of the Tyler Werner Show. It's a bit of a longer one today, but we had a lot of fish to fry, as the saying goes. And we just continue to monitor this situation with Josh Huff, this Eagles team, and this receiver, that receiver that drops a football, and just all kind. The point is, the bottom line is, the Eagles, if they don't beat the Giants, then things are really going to be dark here on the Tyler Werner Show next week. They can't, losing to the Redskins. That's one. This Cowboys loss then was devastating. They lose to the Giants, another division game that's definitely winnable for them. I don't care if they're coming off the bye. They almost beat the Cowboys, and the Cowboys were coming off the bye. The Eagles have every opportunity to win this game, and they should, without question. So with that in mind, we'll talk to you next time on the Tyler Werner Show. Thanks for tuning in as always. I'll talk to you next time on the Tyler Werner Show.
Gosh, it went great.